Keanu Reeves woke up that morning with a quiet sigh. It was his birthday. But the world did not seem to care. The sun peeked through his small apartment window in New York City, casting a soft light on the faded photographs pinned to his wall. He sat up slowly, rubbing his tired eyes, and glanced at the empty side of his bed. It had been years since anyone had shared that space. He had friends, yes, but they were busy people, living busy lives. Birthdays came and went for them, just like they came and went for him. He shuffled to the kitchen, barefoot on the cold floor, and made himself a single cup of coffee. He stared at the mug as if waiting for it to speak. Maybe today someone would call. Maybe an old friend would remember. But deep down, Keanu knew this day would pass like any other, quiet, unnoticed. He carried his mug to the window and watched the city wake up. People laughed, rushed, hugged their loved ones goodbye before heading off to work. He wondered how many of them felt alone too. Keanu grabbed his worn-out leather jacket and stepped outside. He decided he would spend the day walking through the city, just blending in. He liked being invisible sometimes. It gave him a chance to watch life happen all around him. He wandered into a small park, where children ran after pigeons and old men played chess at wooden tables. He sat on a bench, near a fountain, listening to the gentle splash of water. An old woman sat beside him, feeding crumbs to the birds. She did not know him. She did not ask for a selfie or an autograph. For a moment, he felt free. Hours passed. He walked into a tiny diner he had discovered years ago, a place where the waitress always called him honey and never cared about who he was. He sat at the corner booth and ordered pancakes, his birthday treat to himself. As he ate, he watched a young couple at the next table. They held hands, whispered secrets, and laughed so easily. Their joy felt warm, yet it also stung his heart like a cold wind sneaking through a broken window. He paid for his meal, left a generous tip, and stepped back onto the crowded street. The sky grew darker. The city lights flickered on like fireflies. Trapped in glass, Keanu found himself standing in front of a bakery, its window filled with colorful cakes and pastries. He pressed his hand against the glass. He remembered how his mother used to bake him chocolate cake every birthday. They would sit on the floor and eat it straight from the pan, giggling like children. She was gone now, just another photograph on his wall. He bought a small cupcake with a single candle and put it in a paper bag. He would light it later. Alone, he walked home slowly, listening to the soft hum of the city. Inside his apartment, he placed the cupcake on his kitchen table. He pulled out a tiny box of matches, struck one, and lit the candle. The flame flickered, casting a gentle glow on his tired face. He sat down, folded his hands, and whispered, "Happy birthday, Keanu." He closed his eyes, remembering every birthday he had spent with someone he loved. He let the memory warm him for a moment, even as the silence of the room pressed against his heart. Just as he leaned forward to blow out the candle, there was a soft knock on his door. He froze. His breath caught in his chest. No one ever came. By unannounced, he waited, thinking maybe he imagined it. But then another knock this time. A little louder, a little more insistent. Keanu stood up, heart thumping like a drum. He crossed the room and placed his hand on the doorknob, unsure what waited for him on the other side. He opened the door slowly, and there, standing in the dim hallway, was a young boy holding a scruffy stuffed bear. The boy's eyes were wide and filled with something Keanu had not seen in a long time. Pure, innocent hope. The boy looked up at Keanu and said, "Mister, can I come in? I think I'm lost." His voice trembled, yet there was trust in it. Keanu stepped aside without a word and let the boy in. He did not know who this child was or why he had come to his door tonight of all nights. But in that moment, something deep inside Keanu stirred awake, a feeling he thought he had lost forever. As he closed the door behind them, he had no idea that this unexpected guest would change everything about this lonely birthday. And so, what began as a quiet day filled with empty moments was about to turn into a night Keanu would remember for the rest of his life. Keanu knelt down to look at the boy, who could not have been more than 7 years old. The boy's clothes were too big for him, and his shoes looked worn out, as if they had walked too many miles for such small feet. The stuffed bear in his arms was missing an ear, but the boy hugged it tightly, like it was his only friend in the world. Keanu spoke softly, trying not to scare him. "Hey there, buddy. What's your name?" The boy looked around the small apartment, his eyes resting on the flickering candle still burning on the cupcake. He whispered, "My name is Sammy. I'm sorry, mister. I didn't mean to bother you." Keanu felt a lump in his throat. He reached out and touched the boy's shoulder gently. "You didn't bother me at all, Sammy. Are you hungry?" Sammy nodded shyly, his eyes wide. Keanu led him to the kitchen table. He pushed the cupcake toward Sammy. "I got this for my birthday, but I'd like you to have it. Would you like to make a wish?" Sammy's face lit up for the first time, his small hands clutching the cupcake like it was treasure. He closed his eyes so tight his lashes trembled. Then he blew out the candle in one small puff. Keanu clapped softly, and for a second, the lonely apartment felt warm, like someone had lit a fire in the hearth of an old, forgotten cabin. They sat together while Sammy ate. Crumbs fell on the table, but Keanu didn't care. He watched the boy chew every bite like it was the best thing he had ever tasted. After a few minutes, Keanu asked, "Where are your parents, Sammy? Do they know where you are?" Sammy paused, his eyes dropping to the bear in his lap. He shook his head slowly. Mommy said she'd be back soon, but she didn't come back. I got scared, so I left the place. I didn't know where to go. I just kept walking." Keanu's chest tightened. The idea of the small boy wandering alone through the city on a cold night made his heart ache. He reached across the table and covered Sammy's tiny hand with his. "You're safe now, okay? I promise. We'll figure this out together." Sammy looked up at him with eyes that trusted too easily. Yet something about that trust made Keanu feel stronger, more alive than he had in years. He found a blanket and wrapped it around Sammy's shoulders. They sat on the couch, and Keanu asked him about his favorite things. Sammy told him about dinosaurs, how he liked to pretend his bear was a brave explorer, and how he dreamed of finding treasure. The more he talked, the more Keanu listened, leaning into every word as if it was a gift. Hours passed without Keanu noticing. The city outside grew quieter, but inside, the apartment felt alive. They laughed when Sammy tried to roar like a T-Rex. They whispered secrets about where to find the best hiding spots in the city if you were a bear on an adventure. For the first time in years, Keanu felt like he belonged in his own home. When the clock struck midnight, Sammy's eyes grew heavy. Keanu lifted him gently and carried him to his bed. He tucked him in, placing the bear beside him. Sammy's small hand reached out and grabbed Keanu's sleeve. "Will you stay here?" he asked, his voice half lost in a dream. Keanu sat on the floor next to the bed, his back against the wall. "I'll stay right here, buddy. You don't have to worry." As he watched Sammy drift off to sleep, Keanu's mind raced. Who was this boy? Where was his mother? What would he do when morning came? His thoughts tangled like knots in his chest. Yet, beneath the worry, there was something else, something bright. It was the feeling that maybe, just maybe, this lonely birthday was not a curse, but a gift in disguise. As dawn crept in through the window, painting the walls in shades of soft gold, Keanu realized that sometimes life's most beautiful moments come wrapped in the most unexpected ways. He looked at Sammy, sleeping so peacefully, and knew that tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, he would not wake up alone. And somewhere deep inside, Keanu promised himself that he would not let this boy down. Not now, not ever. Keanu barely slept that night. He stayed on the floor beside Sammy, listening to the gentle sound of the boy's breathing. Every so often, Sammy would stir, his small hands still clutching the ear of his stuffed bear. Each time, Keanu would place a hand on his shoulder, whispering, "It's okay, buddy. I'm here." When morning finally came, the first rays of sunlight slid across the floor like a soft promise. Keanu got up slowly. Careful not to wake Sammy, he moved to the kitchen, feeling a sense of purpose that had been missing from his life for far too long. He made coffee for himself and found an old box of cereal in the cupboard. When he poured it into a bowl, he realized he hadn't done something so ordinary for someone else in years. He set the bowl on the table, poured milk, and smiled when he heard tiny footsteps padding across the wooden floor. Sammy appeared at the kitchen door, rubbing his eyes with the back of his hand, the bear dangling from his arm. "Good morning, mister," he mumbled, voice still heavy with sleep. Keanu grinned and waved him over. "Good morning, Sammy. I made you breakfast." Sammy's face brightened as he climbed into the chair and started eating, crunching each spoonful like it was a feast. Keanu sat across from him, sipping his coffee, wondering what the day would bring. He knew he needed to find out where Sammy had come from, but a part of him didn't want to think about the moment when this little boy might have to leave. After breakfast, Keanu helped Sammy wash his face and brush his hair with an old comb he found in the bathroom drawer. They both laughed when the comb got stuck in a knot, and Sammy made silly faces in the mirror. There was something healing in those small moments, like each laugh wiped away a little bit of the loneliness that had clung to Keanu for so long. They decided to go outside. Sammy wore Keanu's old beanie, which covered his ears and made him look like a tiny explorer ready for adventure. They walked through the neighborhood together, hand in hand. People passed by without a second glance, not realizing that for Keanu, this simple walk was a memory he would keep forever. At a small playground, Sammy ran straight to the swings, his giggles echoing through the crisp morning air. Keanu pushed him gently, back and forth, listening to the squeak of the chains and the joyful shouts each time Sammy flew higher. While Sammy played, Keanu sat on a nearby bench, phone in hand, staring at the screen. He knew he should call someone, maybe the police or child services, but the thought of letting Sammy go made his chest ache. He glanced up at the swing set. Sammy waved at him, eyes full of trust and happiness. Keanu forced a smile and waved back, but inside, he was torn. Suddenly, a woman's voice broke through his thoughts. "Excuse me, sir, is that your son?" Keanu turned to see an older woman standing nearby, her small dog sniffing at the grass. He hesitated, looking back at Sammy, who was now sliding down the slide, his laughter filling the air. Yes, well, he's with me," Keanu said, stumbling over his words. The woman tilted her head, sensing something he couldn't hide. "He's a sweet boy. You're lucky to have him." She smiled kindly before walking away. Keanu watched her go, feeling the weight of her words settle deep in his heart. Was he lucky, or was he just holding onto something he knew he couldn't keep? When Sammy ran back, breathless and red-cheeked, Keanu knelt down and looked him in the eyes. "Hey, buddy, we need to talk. I have to find your mommy. Do you remember where you last saw her?" Sammy's smile faded a little, but he nodded. "There was a big building with lots of people. She told me to wait, but she didn't come back. I got scared." Keanu hugged him tightly, the cold breeze blowing around them. "Okay, we'll go find that place. We'll make sure you're safe." But deep down, a selfish part of him wished they would never find it, that this new, fragile bond could stay unbroken just a little longer. They walked back to the apartment, their steps slower than before. Once inside, Keanu made hot chocolate for Sammy. They sat on the couch, the mug warm in Sammy's small hands. He looked up at Keanu, his voice so soft it almost broke him. "Will you still be my friend, even if mommy comes back?" Keanu's eyes stung as he pulled the boy close. "Yes, Sammy. I'll always be your friend. Always." That night, after Sammy fell asleep with the bear tucked under his chin, Keanu sat by the window, staring at the city lights. He knew tomorrow would bring hard choices. He knew he had to do what was right for Sammy, even if it meant letting go of the one thing that had made him feel alive in years. But as the moon rose high above the city, Keanu made a silent promise. To the sleeping boy in the next room, he would not let the world hurt him. He would not let him be alone. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Keanu woke early the next morning, his eyes gritty from another sleepless night. He watched Sammy sleeping, the boy's small chest rising and falling under the blanket. It was strange how a child he didn't even know just days ago now felt like family. In that still moment, the apartment didn't feel empty anymore. He got up quietly and made breakfast. The smell of eggs and toast filled the kitchen. When Sammy woke, he ran in, his hair sticking up in every direction, his stuffed bear tucked under his arm. It smells so good, mister, he said, climbing onto the chair. Keanu laughed. Feeling warmth spread through his chest. After breakfast, they sat on the floor with a city map spread out in front of them. Do you remember what the building looked like, Sammy? Keanu asked gently. Sammy traced his finger over the streets, brow furrowed in concentration. It was tall and had lots of glass, and there was a man outside who gave me a candy. Keanu made a plan. They would visit the nearby shelters first, then go to places that matched Sammy's memory. He knew he couldn't keep Sammy hidden forever. The right thing to do was to find his family if they existed at all. Deep down, fear whispered ugly thoughts. What if his mother didn't want him back? What if she was gone for good? They bundled up and stepped into the cold morning. They walked for hours, stopping at shelters, asking volunteers if anyone had seen a woman looking for her son. Each time, they got the same sad shake of the head. No one knew Sammy. No one recognized the photo. Keanu showed them a quick snapshot he had taken on his phone. They stopped at a small cafe to warm up. Sammy pressed his nose to the window, watching people rush by outside. Mister, if we don't find Mommy, can I stay with you forever? He asked suddenly, turning to Keanu. With wide, hopeful eyes. Keanu felt his throat tighten. He reached over and brushed crumbs off Sammy's cheek. You don't have to worry about forever, buddy. We'll always be together somehow, I promise. But inside, he wondered if he could really keep that promise. He was just one lonely man who didn't know how to be a father but felt like one anyway. As they left the cafe, they walked past a police car parked at the corner. Sammy stiffened, his small hand gripping Keanu's tightly. Don't let them take me, mister. Please. His voice trembled. Keanu knelt down, looking Sammy in the eyes. Hey, no one's going to take you. Okay, I'm right here. But he knew he was lying, even if it was to protect that fragile trust. He could not hide Sammy forever. Sooner or later, the world would come knocking, asking for answers. They kept searching, but every building seemed wrong. They grew tired, their feet dragging on the cold pavement. By late afternoon, they sat on a bench near the river, watching the water ripple under a cloudy sky. Sammy leaned his head on Keanu's shoulder. I don't think Mommy wants me anymore, he whispered, his voice so small it broke something inside Keanu's heart. Keanu turned and cupped Sammy's face in his rough hands. Listen to me, Sammy. You are wanted. You are loved. You hear me? Maybe your mommy is scared too. Maybe she's lost too. But you are never alone. Not while I'm here. Sammy nodded, but a single tear slipped down his cheek anyway. When they returned home, exhausted and cold, Keanu found a voicemail on his phone. It was from an unknown number. The voice on the message was shaky, a woman crying. Please, if anyone finds my son, his name is Sammy. He's all I have. I made a mistake. I'm so sorry. Please bring him back to me. The message ended with a sob. Keanu's single quotes hand trembled as he put down the phone. He looked at Sammy, curled up on the couch, hugging his bear like a shield against the world. The boy had fallen asleep, too tired to even ask for dinner. Keanu sat beside him, gently brushing the hair from his forehead. Part of him wanted to ignore the message, pretend he never heard it, but he knew he couldn't. He had promised Sammy that he would do the right thing, that he would keep him safe deep in his heart. He whispered to himself, love means doing what's right, even if it hurts. He knew tomorrow he would have to make the hardest choice of his life, and as he watched the boy sleep so peacefully, he wondered who would really be saving whom in the end. For the first time in years, Keanu felt the true weight of loving someone, how it made you strong, but also so very breakable. Keanu stayed awake the entire night, sitting by the couch where Sammy slept. He kept listening to that voicemail over and over, the woman's desperate words echoing in the small apartment. Every time he heard her voice tremble, he felt the knot in his chest tighten. He wanted to believe her, that she loved her son and just made a terrible mistake. But a darker part of him wondered what kind of mother leaves a boy alone in a city this big and cold. What if she was dangerous? What if Sammy went back only to be hurt again? The first light of dawn spilled across the floor, painting the room. In pale colors, Sammy woke with a sleepy smile, rubbing his eyes. "Good morning, mister," he said in that small, trusting voice that always melted Keanu's fears. Even for a second. "Good morning, buddy," Keanu answered, forcing a smile. "I have something to tell you." He sat down next to Sammy and held his small hands. "Your mommy called. She's looking for you. She wants you to come back." Sammy's eyes widened, searching Keanu's face for answers. "But will you come too?" "I don't want to go alone." His voice cracked, and his bear fell from his lap onto the floor. Keanu picked it up and tucked it back into Sammy's arms. "I'm going with you, I promise. We're going to meet her together. You're not alone." The boy leaned against him, burying his face in Keanu's chest. For a few minutes, they just stayed like that to people who had found each other when they both needed it most. Keanu wished he could freeze that moment forever. Later that morning, Keanu called the number back. A woman answered, her voice raw from crying. She told him her name was Rachel, and that she had been trying to get clean, fighting a battle with herself that she lost too many times. She told him she never wanted to lose Sammy, but she was afraid he'd be taken away if people knew. When she said she was staying at a small shelter on the edge of the city, Keanu's doubt softened just enough to give her a chance. He dressed Sammy warmly, slipping his own old beanie onto the boy's head. They left the apartment and took a slow bus ride across the city. Sammy leaned against the window, his breath leaving small clouds on the glass. Every now and then, he'd turn to Keanu and ask, "Are you sure you'll stay with me?" And each time, Keanu would squeeze his hand and say, "Always, buddy, always." The shelter was a crumbling brick building near the river, paint peeled from the windows. But the garden out front had bright flowers someone cared for. They walked inside, the air filled with the smell of old wood and soup cooking somewhere in the back. Rachel was sitting in a corner chair, her hair tied back, her eyes red but wide with hope when she saw them. She stood up so fast she almost tripped. "Sammy," she cried, her voice breaking. Sammy froze, his small hand gripping Keanu's coat so tight that it hurt. Keanu knelt down beside him. "It's okay, buddy, go on." Sammy let go, stepping forward. Rachel dropped to her knees and pulled him close, pressing kisses on his hair, whispering "I'm sorry" again and again. She held him so tightly, like if she let go, he might disappear again. Keanu stood back, hands in his pockets, feeling like an outsider looking into a life he didn't belong to. He watched the two of them, mother and son, finding each other again. It should have felt like the right ending. It should have felt good. But in his chest, something felt hollow, like someone had taken a piece of him away. After a while, Rachel looked up at him, her eyes wet. Thank you for keeping him safe. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't." Her voice faded, replaced by a shaky sob. Keanu nodded, unable to find the right words. He felt every emotion at once: relief, sadness, and something deeper he couldn't name. Sammy turned and reached out for him. "Mister, are you leaving now?" His voice was so small, so afraid, that it almost broke Keanu's resolve. He knelt and hugged him, breathing in the scent of his messy hair. "I have to go, buddy. You need to be with your mommy now. But I'm always here, okay? Always." Rachel stood, hugging Sammy close again. "You're welcome to come see him anytime. I want him to know people like you exist." Her voice cracked with sincerity, and for a moment, Keanu believed maybe she really could change. He gave Sammy one last squeeze, then stepped outside. The cold air hit him hard, but it didn't numb the ache in his heart. He turned and saw Sammy's tiny face pressed against the window, his hand waving. Keanu lifted his own hand in return, his breath catching in his throat as he walked away. Each step felt heavier than the last. He had done the right thing, he knew that, but he couldn't help feeling like he had lost something precious. What he didn't know yet was that the story wasn't over. Sometimes life has a way of circling back, of mending things you thought were gone forever. And deep in his heart, a single hope glowed like a candle in the dark. Maybe, just maybe, goodbyes aren't always the end. Weeks passed, and the city felt bigger than ever. Keanu tried to fall back into his old life, but it wasn't the same. The apartment felt empty again, but this time, the emptiness stung in a way he couldn't ignore. He missed the small things: tiny socks on the floor, the the soft laughter echoing through the rooms, the feeling that maybe he wasn't alone anymore. He would wake up at night reaching for the sound of small feet padding across the floor, only to find silence. The cupcake wrapper still sat in the trash, a quiet reminder of that night that changed everything. He kept Sammy's bare ear, a tiny scrap that had fallen off the stuffed toy, before they left for the shelter, sitting on his shelf like a secret promise that he hadn't really said goodbye. He called the shelter once, just to ask how Sammy was doing. Rachel answered. Her voice was tired but hopeful. She told him she had started a new program to stay clean. She said she and Sammy were getting better each day, and that she was working part-time at a corner store. He misses you, she added softly. He talks about you every night before bed. Keanu hung up the phone and sat in the dark for a long time. He wondered if it was enough, just to know that Sammy was okay. But deep down, he felt like he could do more, that maybe he was meant to. One rainy afternoon, Keanu stood in front of a small toy shop. He went inside and found a new bear bigger than Sammy's old one, but just as soft. He wrapped it carefully and took the long bus ride across the city. His hands shook as he walked up to the shelter. When Rachel opened the door, her eyes widened in surprise. She looked stronger than before, her hair pulled back neatly, her eyes clearer. Keanu, you came. He nodded, his voice catching. Is he here? Rachel stepped aside, and there was Sammy, sitting on the floor with crayons spread around him. When he saw Keanu, his face broke into the brightest smile, the kind that could melt any cold place in the world. He ran straight into Keanu's arms, the force of it almost knocking him over. Mister, you came back, Sammy shouted, burying his face in Keanu's chest. Keanu held him tight, the new bear tucked under his arm. I missed you so much, buddy, Keanu whispered, his voice thick with tears he didn't bother to hide. He sat with Sammy for hours that day. They drew pictures of dinosaurs and treasure maps. Rachel brought them cups of tea and sat across from them, watching her son giggle and chatter. Keanu could see the change in her, the fierce love she had for her son, now shining brighter than her fears. As the sun began to set, painting the small shelter room in gold and pink, Rachel leaned forward. I've been thinking, she said quietly. We can't do this alone. I can't. You're good for him. Would you want to keep visiting? Maybe be part of his life, for real? Keanu looked at Sammy, who was busy showing his new bear the drawings he'd made. His heart felt like it might burst. He had thought that night was the end of something beautiful, but now he realized it was only the beginning. Yes, he said, his voice steady and clear. Yes, I'd like that very much. Over the next weeks, they made a new routine. Every Sunday, Keanu would come by the shelter. Sometimes they'd go to the park. Sometimes they'd just sit and talk. Rachel stayed by their side, building a life she never thought she could have. Every small victory, 1 month sober, 2 months working steady, became something to celebrate together. On Keanu's next birthday, he didn't wake up alone. He sat on the same old couch, but this time, Sammy was there beside him, holding a cupcake with 2 candles, one for him and one for Hope. Rachel stood in the kitchen, laughing as she wiped flour off her cheek. As they sang softly, the tiny room filled with more warmth than Keanu had felt in years. He blew out the candles with Sammy's small hands wrapped around his own. The wish he made was simple, but powerful. Let this be the start of something that never fades. He looked at Sammy's eyes, so full of trust and light, and felt a truth settle deep in his soul. Sometimes family isn't the one you're born with. Sometimes it's the one you find when you least expect it. On a lonely birthday, behind an old door, in the shape of a little boy holding a scruffy bear. And so, Keanu's once empty life became something fuller, something real. A new story began that night, and this time, he knew he would never have to spend another birthday alone.